All right, our next section, we're going to be discussing Napoleon's empire, Napoleon Bonaparte's empire. So now Napoleon has France, and immediately he makes himself emperor. He, close to immediately, we talked about some of the laws he passed, the Napoleonic Code, French Revolution ideas included in it, ideas that were included in it that were not of the French Revolution. But Napoleon also, an army guy, decides that he wants to grow his empire. So when he took over in 1802 and made himself full emperor, the French were already at war with England. And eventually this war will expand, and the French will go to war now with Austria, Russia, Sweden, and Prussia. Basically, all of Europe is going to go to war with Napoleon during this period. Okay, and if you remember, the French have this massive, massive volunteer army of people who wanted to fight for their rights, understanding that traditionally Europeans fought for their lord or their king, which isn't much of motivation if you're not getting rights. So he has this big army, and he is going to quickly take control of Spain. He does fight the French in the Rhine Valley, and he wins. He fights this part of Italy that was controlled by the Austrians, and he wins. He extends his empire all the way down through Italy. Okay. Now this is where there's some really interesting stuff for me, because when he took control of Spain, Spain controlled California during this period. Okay. So what that means is that if you were living in California, which meant you were probably a Native American or a Spaniard, all of a sudden now you're controlled by the French. So yeah, California, which was under the control of Spain for hundreds of years, has a few years under the control of France. So California goes from being New Spain for hundreds of years to New France for a couple of years, until Napoleon loses. Then it goes back to being New Spain until the people of Mexico defeat the Spanish a decade later, and then this becomes Mexico for about 20 something years before the United States takes it. But anyways, that's personal to us as Californians, Los Angelinos. I'm proud of it. So he defeats Austria, Prussia, and Russia by 1807. By 1812, he controls most of Europe. In Spain, Holland, Italy, and Swiss, and in many of these countries, he puts his relatives in control. In some of these places, though, he allows the people to stay in control, and then they ally themselves with him. So he says, look, you guys just do what I say and you can stay in control. This is more of an indirect control, where direct rule is when he actually puts his people in there who rule and police and control. In some countries, he says, you guys stay in power and just do what I say and you can still rule. Everywhere he goes, he brings a Napoleonic Code. Okay, so for a decade, which is a fair chunk of time, most of Europe lived under the Napoleonic rule and the Napoleonic Code and the laws within it. And that says no serfdom. That means there's no serfdom in all of Europe. That means that all of a sudden now these people are tasting a bit of freedom. That means that anyone can get a job in government, not just royalty or nobility, which again, for the average person is revolutionary. And for women, honestly, women in France had more rights than in other places. This wasn't as big of a deal. When it goes to freedom of press and speech, most places didn't have freedom of the press, so this wasn't a big deal. So really what happened is that during this period, he spreads some of the ideas of the French Revolution, which are the ideas of the Enlightenment, which are the ideas that our country is built on. So Napoleon's kind of this mixed figure because he was this dictator who tried to take over and did some cruel stuff. But at the same time, he spread Enlightenment ideals, ideals of the French Revolution through much of Europe. And once those ideas get in there, they stick. Once someone tells you, and you've been living for 10 years with certain rights, and the government actually does stuff for me instead of me just doing whatever the king wants, it's going to be hard to put the cat back in the bag. Those ideas are going to stick, um, especially for men. He also allows religious toleration, which is a big deal. Remember the way that the religious wars and the fact that Jewish people were mistreated by Europeans so badly, and all of a sudden he's like, whatever, religion shouldn't matter. Allow the church to be the church, and um, if you don't want to, you don't have to. And that's a big deal. He was never able to conquer Britain because it's an island, and we're going to find out that as other people are learning these ideas, they don't want to be French. And they start to be proud of who they are. The Germans start to feel like, hey, we're not French, we're Germans. But I like some of these ideas, but, but I'm kind of feeling proud of being a German. The Italians, the Spanish have this very similar experience. So now we're seeing a spread of ideas and the beginning of a new idea that we call nationalism. It's this intense national pride. Um, so instead of just feeling loyal to your king, you start to feel like a German. I'm not just, my lord's subject, but I'm an individual man with individual rights who's a German or an Italian or a Spaniard or an Austrian. Um, and this idea of nationalism is going to spread throughout his area as well, having pride in your common language, religion, and history. And now Napoleon's got a big empire, okay? And now Napoleon is going to want to continue to grow his empire. How's that going to go for him? Let's find out in our last section of the day.